G'day all you frothers, it's Will here from Flow Mountain Bike and welcome to this video review of the new Canyon Spectral On. Now in this video we're going to be going into detail about what's changed on the Spectral On, and then we'll be talking about how it rides on the trail, what we like about this bike and what we don't like about this bike. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So the Spectral On is Canyon's fun-loving mid-travel e-mountain bike. This latest model represents the fourth generation of the Spectral On platform, and for this year it's been updated with a brand new full carbon fibre frame. The mullet setup remains with a 29-inch front wheel and a 27.5-inch wheel at the back, and the same 4-bar suspension layout has been carried over, though the kinematics have been updated and rear travel has lifted slightly to 155mm. Canyon pairs that to a 150mm travel fork, though the frame is rated to go up to 160 if you want to go there. The Shimano EP8 motor remains, though the drive unit has been clocked upwards, and that's to allow the battery to sit lower down in the frame. Canyon has developed its own battery design for the new Spectral On, and riders can now choose between a 720 watt-hour or a whopping 900 watt-hour option. The battery is easily removable from the frame, so you can charge it separately or while it's mounted inside the down tube. There have also been some significant updates to the Spectral On's geometry. Canyon has slackened out the head angle by a full degree, that's now at 65.5 degrees. And the reach has also increased by around 25mm per size. On the medium frame that I've been testing here, the reach has grown to 460mm. Now, to rein in the longer top tube, Canyon is speccing the Spectral On with a shorter 40mm stem, and it's also brought the seat angle forward by 2 degrees. That now sits at 76.5 degrees. And lastly, the chainstay length has grown by around 5mm, though it's still quite short with a rear centre length of 440mm. For 2022, there are 5 models in the Canyon Spectral On lineup, with prices starting around 9 grand for the Spectral On CF7. The bike that we've been testing here is the second from the top of the range. This is the Canyon Spectral On CFR. The price on this bike is $14,649 Australian dollars. And as with every Canyon mountain bike, you'll need to add on the necessary shipping costs because these bikes are sold direct to consumer. And in the case of the Spectral On, you'll need to add on a few $100 if you decide to go for that bigger 900 watt-hour battery option. In terms of spec, this bike comes with Fox factory suspension with a 36 Grip 2 fork and a Float X shock. There's a Shimano XTR group set, carbon Reynolds wheels and Maxxis tyres with a 2.5-inch Assegai on the front and a 2.6-inch Minion DHR2 on the rear. Confirmed weight for our Canyon Spectral On CFR test bike is 21.92 kilos. Now that's weighed with the tyre setup tubeless but without pedals. That's a pretty decent weight for a full-powered e-mountain bike with a big 720 watt-hour battery. And the high-end build kit certainly helps, as does the tyre spec. Now, since the Exo Plus rear tyre casing isn't the toughest, I fitted a Cushcore insert inside the rear wheel to protect those fancy carbon rims. Now, having loved the lively character of the old Spectral On, I'm happy to report that the new model is still an absolute hoot to ride, whilst being a better balanced bike overall. For a start, it's noticeably more planted on the descents. The updated geometry and the Assegai provide more grip and stability up front, allowing you to push harder and with more confidence. Weight distribution has also improved, so you feel nicely integrated within the wheelbase rather than feeling like you're perched on top of the rear wheel. And with the motor position and the lower battery, the bike's centre of mass sits lower down and closer to the BB. The culmination of the Spectral On's well-placed mass and its refined geometry is terrific agility. Entering corners does require a bit more angulation than the old bike, but once you've calibrated to that commitment point, it rips corners beautifully. The 27.5-inch rear wheel helps with the sharper turn-in, and the full carbon chassis with its beefy back end and the oversized pivot axles is super stiff and responsive. Because of this, the high volume rear tyre can feel a little soft when you're pushing really hard. It's also less likely to dig into loose surfaces, where it tends to float over the top and feel a little bit vague. More aggressive riders will likely want to fit a narrower rear tyre with a stiffer double-down casing, though I personally quite liked the compliant feel of that 2.6-inch tyre paired with the Cushcore insert. The suspension is also brilliant, being one of the standout attributes of the new Spectral On. Small bump sensitivity is excellent, with a floaty and comfortable ride quality that helps it to generate loads of grip on rough terrain. Thanks to the Floatex shock with its larger bottom-out bumper, there is also a load more progression compared to the old bike. This gives the Spectral On added support with a nicely controlled ramp up towards the end of the travel. I may use a full travel on plenty of occasions, though it was never a harsh experience. As well as being a better bike on the descents, the Spectral On is also more comfortable on the climbs. The steeper seat angle and the longer chainstay certainly help here, as does the more supportive suspension. There's less wallow from the rear shock, and that's resulted in fewer pedal strikes compared to the old bike. There is less rollover compared to a full 29er though, so it can be harder to maintain grip and momentum when the climbs get really steep and gnarly. And this characteristic will be exacerbated for taller riders who may actually find the back end to be too short. And those riders who are chasing outright stability will likely be better served by a 29er with a longer rear end, as something like the Norco Sight VLT or the Trek Rail. Of course, the reason you'd be looking at a bike like the Spectral On in the first place is for its playful ride quality, and in that regard, the mullet setup delivers by the bucket load. As for the downsides of the new Canyon Spectral On, well, having come off testing the Trek Fuel EXE, which is the quietest e-mountain bike we've ever ridden, I did find the motor and chassis noise on the Spectral On to be somewhat jarring. The EP8 motor emits a high-pitched whine on the climbs, and it suffers from the well-known clacking noise on the descents, which seems to echo through the cavernous carbon downtube. You soon get used to these noises and tune them out, though having thoroughly enjoyed the blissful near silence of Trek's TQ motor, it is hard to go back. I also found the EP8 motor to exhibit more surging in its power delivery during turbulent pedaling on awkward tech climbs. Admittedly, as a lighter rider, I find the boost setting to be way too hectic for riding on proper single track, and even the trail setting can feel a little bit unwieldy when things get really steep and ledgy. Of course, you can tune the EP8 motor via Shimano's eTube app, and dialing down the assist character and acceleration response certainly helps to soften that power delivery. Still, when it comes to full-powered motors, in our experience, both the Bosch and Brose equivalents provide a more seamless and predictable feel. As for other complaints, well, I'm definitely not a fan of the headset cable routing, which does add complication to basic servicing and maintenance. It's also worth noting that the special Acros headset does limit how low the stem can go on the steerer tube. This contributes to the tall stack height of the Spectral On, so riders who are on the smaller side of a given frame size may struggle to get the bars down low enough. I've also had concerns about the battery door, which seems somewhat flimsy with just a magnet holding it in place. Those who regularly ride in muddy conditions will want to keep an eye on this part of the frame, as I can see the battery door being pulled open by a shoe clumped up with mud. There is otherwise a decent amount of mud clearance through the back end. While there is a bit of a loam shelf behind the bottom bracket, the main pivot is well shielded by a neat rubber flap. Chain management is also excellent, with a soft textured chainstay protector and a tiny upper guide that help to minimize noise. Other nice features include the tool-free axles and the option to fit a bottle inside the mainframe, though you will need to buy the special 3-bolt proprietary cage, as a standard cage won't fit in there. And while it's great to see the Spectral On offered with 2 different battery options, many riders are going to be wondering which one to go for. Well, the 900 watt-hour battery obviously gets you more range. During our standardized range test, I was able to rack up almost 2,500 meters of elevation gain before I ran the battery flat, which is insane. Certainly for those who are regularly hitting up big rides in the mountains, the bigger battery option does make sense. Boost addicts and heavier riders will also appreciate the bigger 900 watt-hour battery, which pretty much eliminates any range anxiety whatsoever. The downside of the 900 watt-hour battery, aside from costing a few $100 more, is that it adds nearly a kilo in extra weight. Now that in itself isn't a huge deal, but the fact that that weight is concentrated right up towards the head tube does make it noticeable. With the bigger battery fitted, I found it harder to pick up the front wheel over obstacles on the trail. The bike felt more grounded overall, with the extra weight sacrificing some of the Spectral On's agility when things got fast and twisty. Personally, as a lighter rider, I much preferred the handling with the 720 watt-hour battery, which still provided a load of range, particularly if you make use of the trail and eco settings. Now, we'll point out here that we've got loads more information about the range testing in the full review of the Spectral On, which is now live over at flowmountainbike.com. We've also got some detailed comparisons between the Spectral On and the Merida E160 and the Specialized Levo, so make sure you click the link in the video description below to check out the full review of this bike right here. And there we have it, folks. That's our review of the new Canyon Spectral On. Now, if you'd like to know more about this fun-loving mixed wheel size e-mountain bike, then make sure you go to flowmountainbike.com to read the full review in all of its glorious detail. If you've got any questions for me about the Spectral On, drop those into the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, because we've got a lot of cool reviews coming your way in the near future. Otherwise, that's it from me, guys. I'll see you guys next time. Tooroo!